It's my privilege to welcome you all to this first session on inequities in maternal health, which is a major challenge for healthcare planners and policy makers, not just in India, but world over. For this session, we are very privileged to have with us Srilata Rao Seshadri ma'am. She is currently faculty at the Azim Premji University and has a rich experience in health systems and policy. Previously, ma'am was with the Center for Global Health Research at the University of Toronto, where she led a national study on the use of evidence in health sector decision making. We are very privileged to have you, ma'am, with us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Ma'am is going to give the keynote address for today and will also chair the remaining of the proceedings. So I now hand over the session and the floor to ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I thank IPH for giving me this opportunity to be here today to speak to you all. Today, this session is dedicated to looking at inequities in maternal health care. It's a little sad and ironic that after all these years, we still need to have this discussion. Most of you who've been working in the health sector would have encountered some sort of maternal and child health program in the course of your careers. For the past many decades, this has appeared to us in different avatars. So we had first MCH, we've had IMNCI, we have had RCH, we have had JSY, we have had NRHM. All of these different programs, national level programs and global initiatives, I might add, have been trying to address the issue of maternal health care and how to improve access to, availability of, quality of maternal and child health, right? So why are we still talking about it, and what is it that, what are the constraints and bottlenecks that we face both globally and within India in terms of achieving the kind of maternal health outcomes that we are looking for? So to start with, what I'll do is look at the most definitive and most unfortunate outcome of poor maternal health care, which is which is maternal death. So if you look at global maternal mortality ratios, you will see that inequity is a global phenomenon. It's not something that we face exclusively in India. And if you look at the map of the world, you can see quite clearly that inequity in maternal health outcomes in terms of maternal mortality are quite stark. So there are some countries where there are fewer than 20 women per 100,000 live births who die in the course of delivery. And there are countries where there are more than, greater than 1,000 women who die per 100,000 live births. India, happily, is not one of the worst cases that you find globally. Those are largely in sub-Saharan Africa. The improvements that have been made in India more recently we'll come to in a few minutes, but it is still unacceptably high. We are currently, in the last round, I think we came up with the number of 178 maternal deaths per 100,000 live births, which is still unacceptably high. And when we talk about inequity, if you look at the numbers that we have here, you look at the all India average, and you look at the regional numbers that are presented here, and this is from the sample registration system, you see that the inequities are regional, geographic, and quite stark. So if you look at all India, we have an average of 178. But if you look at just the southern region, the average there is 105 maternal deaths for 100,000 live births. And of course, we have EAG and Assam, where it is 257. Now, these differences mean actually translate into thousands of women's lives. And even within the South, if you were to unpack the South, and there are essentially 4 states that are included here, you will find that Kerala certainly leads the group, and followed by Tamil Nadu. And then states such as Andhra and Karnataka are lagging behind even there. So the the interstate disparities are also quite important to keep note of, apart from the regional disparities. If you look at how the maternal mortality ratio has declined over a period of time in the regions that have been specified, you find that, again, the trajectory of the decline has been similar in most cases, but because of the starting point being so high, they have ended up at a different place over a period of time. So clearly, there are some interventions that seem to be working, but there needs to be a lot more that has to go into addressing this issue of maternal mortality before we can have greater equity in the outcomes that we are looking for in the different regional groups that we are looking at. What are the causes of these maternal deaths? If you look at the causes, 60% of the causes, actually all the causes are well known, and 60% of the causes, there are well-known interventions that, that have been proven to work. So if you look at the 35% of cases that die due to hemorrhage, or the 17% of cases who die due to hypertension, or the 10% of cases who die due to unsafe abortion. Any one of these, if have been known to policymakers and to program planners for a long time, and there are proven interventions that can actually address these causes of death. It is not that these are either unknown or in some way the health system is incapable of addressing these causes of death. Yet they continue. And if you look at the ways in which that they can be addressed, it is not rocket science. If there is good quality antenatal care, access to good quality antenatal care, if there is a safe services available for delivery, if there is good quality postnatal care, most of these deaths can be averted. So the tragedy really of inequity and in maternal health outcomes is really a tragedy of particularly epic proportions, because largely most of those deaths can be averted. And that speaks hugely of a failure of both the health system and of society as a whole not to be able to avert those deaths. There is global evidence on equity in access to maternal health and child health services. So if you look at this issue of inequity, it is a global issue. As we were talking even in the previous session, it was mentioned that this is a global issue. It's not peculiar to India, but we have issues that are peculiar to our particular situation in India. So here, the inequity is looked at largely in terms of poverty. And poverty is one of the common ways in which inequity is measured, clearly. And if you look at the disparity between the lowest quintile and the uppermost quintile, in some of these important indicators of health system performance and access to services that lead to better maternal health care, you can see that some of the disparities are really stark. So for example, if you look at things like, for example, not just the if you look at skilled birth attendance, that's the one that I wanted to point to. If you look at the skilled birth attendance and look at the disparity between the poorest and the richest in their ability to access skilled care at the time of delivery, it is really dramatic. And that could actually mean the difference between life and death as far as a maternal delivery outcome is concerned. So clearly, access to health services is very closely related to poverty. What else could it be related to? And we have some data from India, again, as was pointed out in the previous session, largely based on 3 rounds of a large survey, the National Family Health Survey. But luckily, there is more recent data that is going to be coming in and hopefully will be analyzed soon. But if we look at this and you look at the ratio between rich and poor, the rich and poor differential in access to 3 very important indicators of health systems performance, right? Which are skilled birth attendance, delivery either at a public or at a private facility. And you can see that the ratio between the rich and the poor is high. It's 1:2, 1:3, 1:8, it's been reducing over a period of time. Certainly there's been a dramatic change between NFHS 1 and NFHS 2 in delivery at a private facility. It has come down, which is perhaps an indicator that services at public facilities have been improving. But the fact is that the differential between the rich and poor still continues to be very significant. And if you look at other maternal health services, right, in terms of how to postnatal care, for example, if you look at postnatal care, then you look at the difference between the poorest and the richest, and the differences are stark. You can see that on each one of those indicators, the richest are doing significantly, and if you see the difference between the poorest and the richest, it's almost 1:2. The richest are twice as likely to have good advice on both postnatal and most likely antenatal care than the poorest quintiles. Now, all of you would have heard of the 3 delays model, right? So what has the system been trying to address? It's been trying to address reducing these 3 delays. What are the 3 delays? Delay in making the decision to seek help, delay in arriving at a health facility, and delay in receiving adequate treatment. So this has been a very common way of conceptualizing the reasons for poor maternal health outcomes. And the kinds of solutions that have been offered have been largely based on improving the health system response to these kinds of delays, right? So the things that have been identified is lack of availability of services, for example, lack of accessibility to services, whether it is economic accessibility or geographic accessibility, lack of acceptability of those services, perhaps addressing some of the cultural and other social constraints to making those services accessed, and poor quality of services. So if you look at the National Rural Health Mission and you look at all the NRHM interventions over the last 10 years and more, they have been largely trying to ease these constraints, to make to improve the infrastructure, for example, to build more hospitals, improve the infrastructure at the available facilities, increase the availability of doctors, increase the amount of medicines, drugs, and other consumables that are available, training, improve the training of the medical personnel, increase the number of outreach workers who can go out into communities and increase acceptance of certain kinds of services. These are all health systems-based interventions that have been used to try and ease these 3 constraints. And Some would argue that to an extent, these interventions have been successful. And certainly over the past 10 years, there has been improvement in maternal health outcomes and in acceptance of certain types of health services. For example, the number of institutional deliveries have certainly increased thanks to interventions such as JSY and so on. However, as was pointed out in the previous session, there is still a proportion, it may be 20%, it may be more, of women who are simply not being able to access these services for reasons that go beyond what the health system can actually address, or reasons that go beyond what has been done so far have been able to address. And this takes us back, and this has been discussed quite extensively in the previous session. It takes us back to the social determinants of health. And this is a conceptual framework that was put together actually by the Commission on Social Determinants of Health. And you can see clearly here that what the system has been addressing are the factors that come on the right of this framework, which are the intermediate determinants of the social determinants. But when we look at the structural determinants of health, there is not much that has been addressed either through policies or programs in order to address those particular structural constraints that are being faced in terms of women being able to access the maternal health care that they need when they need it, right? So if you look at some of the issues, governance, there is some move towards addressing some of the governance issues. But if you look at the social policies, if you look at issues such as gender, caste, all of these are intractable problems that we have been living with, and whether through a program one can actually address those without taking a much larger policy view of it, which goes beyond the health sector. Is it possible for us to address, for example, to make a piecemeal program to address the issue of caste within the health sector, whether that's going to be an effective way forward to be able to address a massive issue such as caste is something that we also need to think about. And the whole idea of the intersectionality or intersectorality, whatever you want to call it, that issue has to be taken on board, and we need to start thinking about how do we start looking at this in a broader way, going beyond only looking at it as through the lens of economics or through the lens of the health sector or through education, because even in the education sector, people are very exercised by issues which are similar to what we are talking about in terms of maternal health care. So this is one quote which I found very powerful, and we can just read it together. The poor health of poor people is caused by the unequal distribution of power, income, goods, and services. This unequal distribution of health damaging experiences is not in any sense a natural phenomenon, but is the result of a combination of poor social policies and programs, unfair economic arrangements, and bad politics. I think there is a lot for us to read into this single quote, which is that goods and services one could perhaps provide. We hear a lot about how the health sector in India is underfinanced. It is. It's seriously underfinanced, and it is driving a lot of poor people who cannot afford it are being forced to access services in the private sector because public sector services are either not available or of such poor quality that nobody trusts them, right? So perhaps increasing financing will lead to better quality goods and services that are being provided through the health system. It may be possible that as a result of rising incomes, people are going to be able to access health services elsewhere as well, and therefore bringing about better economic policies to increase, to have better livelihoods, increased incomes. All of that may, in the long term, impact also the ability of families to be better job opportunities, livelihood opportunities will give families an opportunity to seek better health care. But the whole issue of power, the lack of power, the asymmetry of power between different groups, and how is this power defined and how does this power play out in terms of accessing care, accessing services. This is something that the social determinants of health framework tries to bring about, and also is something important for us to remember, because there is no magic bullet to solving this problem of how do we improve access to maternal health care? How do we improve equity in the access to maternal health care? 5 main drivers have been identified in the literature on what are the drivers of inequity in access to healthcare. And these are largely nothing new that we don't know. Economic status, gender certainly, level of education, and social status, whether SC and or ST, and age, because in India particularly this issue of adolescence being of young girls conceiving and having issues with maternal care is also something that we need to worry about. There's a lot of evidence that it leads to a huge amount of maternal risk. Now, these 5 things are not separate. They're not 5 separate threads. They are very closely intertwined, right? So often the girl will be young, will also be a tribal, will be poor and uneducated. All 5 of those things at the same time. So when such is the case, it's difficult to be able to say, let's reduce the cost of care, and that will improve accessibility to health services. It might for a few. Reducing cost of care will certainly reduce some part of the hurdle, but it's not going to address many of the other issues that are so intertwined with that issue also of poverty. Since all of these determinants are so intimately intertwined, the issue is really to be able to make interventions that are, first of all, to do research, which is far more intersectoral, as we've been talking about earlier, to understand how all of these influence one another and how do they play out? Which one is critical? Where can we intervene best? And this won't be the same everywhere. So we can do a lot of quantitative data analysis, but ultimately it has to be quite specific at the community level to understand which of these drivers is the one that is going to be the one that needs to be tweaked, and that will make the difference, number 1. Secondly, are there more, broad-based interventions that we can think of? Because intervening community by community obviously is not going to be realistic. So how do we prioritize key populations and make sure that we do everything that needs to be done in order to reach that prioritized population? Some efforts are being made, but there's a greater need for community engagement and participation. We keep talking about decentralization and we talk about empowerment of local bodies and bringing, for example, the panchayats into the conversation. But have we really been able to do that, and have we done that effectively? And would that be one way to ensure that there is greater equity in access to healthcare? And continuing to ensure that our current programs are working better and more effectively effectively the governance issues that we are facing are also dealt with, I think that too is an important thing, because the evidence shows that they are having some impact, but there are huge gaps, and there are still women who are falling below the radar and who are not being reached by these programs. How can we make sure that we do that better and do it more consistently as we move forward? I think I'll end now by just saying that zero maternal death, I think that's something that we've been talking about a lot, zero tolerance for maternal death. And we need to be able to do whatever it takes to be able to ensure that we are going to do so. We have in our upcoming session, we have a couple of papers that are going to look at very detailed analysis of some of the causes of unfortunate maternal outcomes. And I think there are lessons to be learned from all of these kinds of studies, which we need to be able to pull together and create platforms that will inform policy in an effective way as we go forward. Thank you.